Well, good morning, everybody. Warm welcome to our session about, well, absence technology, and it's really nice that Jack joined us here on stage. So before we get started, I want to ask the presenters here, because I'm only the moderator, so I can ask the nasty questions. I can come to you and help you to ask the nasty questions. But before we start doing that, maybe you all introduce yourself.
Yeah.
So please, Simon, you start.
So I've got a few slides, so I'll hand over to Keith first.
Okay, Keith Turnbull, Chief Development Officer at AppSense. I've been here a year and a half. I came to my first BriForum actually last year, and that was a pretty exciting experience, demoing some of the pre-release products that we've now launched since then, and we'll show you a few here. Prior to that, 13 and a half years at Citrix, saw what's now XenApp from the early days, WinFrame. Well, I used WinFrame at Insignia, but then at Citrix, MetaFrame, presentation server, all the crazy names that Citrix goes through in terms of taglines and products, and worked on HDX, worked on the first versions of the receiver on all the different platforms. So been in the virtualization business and latterly really moving onto mobile devices quite a long time. And I think I said last year, you know, AppSense reminds me of when I joined Citrix back in 1998. Citrix was 300 odd people. AppSense, when I joined, 300 people, now 550. So quite an exciting time, and looking forward to chatting with many of you sort of after the session, maybe at dinner tonight, or in the bar, or certainly on our booth, because we've got a lot to cover here, so we won't get through it all. But anyway, that's me. Simon?
Thank you. Simon Townsend. I've actually been at AppSense a little bit longer, about 10 years, so there's some familiar faces in the room. So I've seen a massive amount of change. Obviously, we have a product called Desktop now that's about 14 years old, predominantly based in the Windows space. We've released a data product to market, and most recently a mobile product to market. So I've seen a lot of change as we start to talk about, you know, the older UEM solutions and the newer EMM solutions. Heavily involved in what that means for AppSense moving forward. How is that going to come together in terms of end-user computing, etc. That's probably about all I'm going to say.
Did you say you were VP of Product Management?
I look after product management at the moment. Yeah, I'll hand over to Benny.
Yeah, Benny Tritch. I'm Director of the Technical Community for AppSense. Been with AppSense since 2.5 years now. Prior to that, working for consulting companies and companies dealing with Citrix and terminal server environments. I will be the moderator this time, as I said earlier, and so I want to hand it over.
Hold on. You're a CTP.
Yeah, I'm a CTP and
an MVP.
Yeah, so belong to the Citrix Community Program and the Microsoft Community Program. Thank you, Keith.
And what about what about the VMware on the VMware?
No, I'm not.
You're not a V-expert yet.
No, not yet. I'm working on that. They invited me to join the beta programs and stuff like that, but I'm not on the V-expert program so far.
You're getting close now.
Well, hello, I'm Jack Madden. So I blog at brianmadden.com, of course. This is my 6th or 7th BriForum that I've been at, my 3rd time speaking. But I spend like 95% of my time in the enterprise mobility management space, which a year ago we wouldn't even been using the term EMM, you know, for enterprise mobility management. We've been talking about mobile device management and this new upstart of mobile application management. So since all that stuff is very new, I've been spending a lot of time in it, and I think they said it would be okay if I just give a little plug for the book that I'm writing that will be out in just a couple of weeks, Enterprise Mobility Management, the book. basically the current story of where the industry is now and a little bit of where the future could go. So check that out in a couple of weeks.
And we are in the book, aren't we?
What's that?
Yeah, we
Is
are.
Absence in the book? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
It's a great book. Definitely a really good book. Recommend it. Fantastic.
But I was very honored to be asked to join the panel today. And also, as the independent person here, I'll remind you that I'll be able to ask get the hard points in as the independent person. So we'll see what happens.
Good.
Simon, would you give us an overview of what Absence does so that you
that's fine. I think historically we've stood up at these events and we've sort of given a 45 to 75-minute presentation. This format was initiated by Benny, and really what we wanted to do was to have a slightly more interactive session to talk about enterprise mobility management, but also talk about how that perhaps is going to evolve over time and actually how Absence views things, because at the moment we tend to look at these things in the Windows world and the mobile world, and for some people they're starting to come together, and at the moment for others that they haven't, for instance. So here what we have is a menu, if you like, of topics that we can pick and choose. We obviously have our own route that we would like to follow, but we're happy to go down whatever route you as the audience may take us. But I did feel, as it was an Absence sponsored session, perhaps I should start with a little bit of an Absence plug. And I think it's important, actually, if anybody's on Twitter at the moment, if anyone is interested in the term user environment management, or anyone's been following Absence and what they've been doing in the MDM space, supposedly, then it's interesting because at the moment we have this 14-year-old product we call Desktop Now that's worked in this Windows environment, and then we talk about this mobile technology we've got, and we've got some demos and some really neat technology that has these ELM capabilities. So the question always gets asked, so who is Absence and what does the future look like? Are you a UEM play? Are you an MDM play? And the next couple of slides I'm hoping will start to try and answer that, perhaps at a high level for this audience, so I apologise, but I think they do make a start at least. And I think the first statement I want to make is that we believe that fundamentally we, as a whole, have to start thinking differently about how we manage our IT infrastructure. Now we call this a people-centric approach as opposed to a device-centric approach. And all we mean by that is, if I look in the room now, there is how many? 100 people in the room, shall we say? Anyone want to have a guess at how many devices are in the room? I'm trying to make a point. Right.
350.
350 over there. I don't really care if there's 101 devices or there's 400 devices. The point being is, there's more devices in the room than there are people. So it makes a lot of sense to actually start thinking about how can I manage this person as opposed to using multiple platforms when it comes to managing his devices. Historically in the Windows world, we've just said, I will manage Benny by managing this Windows-based device. It's now not cost effective to look at that. So actually, at a high level, we're actually all about what is it about Benny that we want to manage, and how can we manage him as opposed to the platforms or the devices that he uses. So manage Benny, if that's possible.
It's not possible.
Now it's interesting because this brings me to my second point, which is I don't actually want to manage Benny. His manager does that, right?
Yeah. Keith is my manager, so.
From an IT point of view, what I want to manage about Benny is actually the device, if I own that device, the corporate applications, and the corporate data. So these embarrassing T-shirts that I'm wearing today that say BYO Dad, the reason I'm wearing it is because I spilt strawberry yogurt down my white shirt this morning. But the reason it says BYO Dad is all about the device, the apps and the data. And at a very high level, that's what our products are trying to achieve. It's about, do you need to manage that device? Do you want to manage the applications? And do you want to manage the data? Because at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. And somehow, as an organisation, we need to provide that balance, which is user choice, user freedom, but make sure that we still have that level of control in an IT, from an IT point of view. So a new graphic probably for many people in the room from Accents, which literally just very simply represents this concept that we can wrap corporate policy and provide user experience around devices, apps and data, regardless of the platform that's being used. Okay? And today, we do that via 3 products. And those are those 3 products and product names that hopefully you're familiar with. Desktop now, been around a long time, as I said, operates in that Windows space. Data now specifically providing access to corporate data with policy and user experience, and mobile looking at platforms such as iOS, Android, and other mobile platforms moving forward.
I mean, to be fair, you say desktop now has been around for a long time. The products in that package have. I mean, you rebranded that probably, was it about a year and a half ago, a year and a quarter ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did the Citrix thing there, just another new name, a new tagline, a new set of logos. Yeah.
Does that make sense to anybody? Does anyone want to disagree with me? I'd be interested to see whether people think that perhaps a people-centric approach or not focusing on this dad is the wrong way of doing it.
Did we miss something?
Did we miss anything?
Is it devices, applications, and data? Is it something else that you think that is important?
How about location?
Location.
So that is here. You can have a free Rubik's cube. Don't say we don't give away anything. I think location is obviously quite specific. I think if I broaden that out more, I think what we're talking about is context.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Context.
and I think context is extremely important. And when myself and the folks in marketing were discussing about what this graphic should look like, the word context comes up a hell of a lot, I can assure you, because actually if you dive down into some of the detail and you look at what our products do, they always provide context. And actually our contextual engine and our rules engine, for instance, in both the mobile, the data and the desktop products, actually is incredibly important to a lot of organisations, because it's not about necessarily Benny, it's about, is he wearing a black t-shirt today, is it a Thursday, is he in London, where is he, whatever it might be.
And it's interesting, that's exactly the point where Jag mentioned us in his book, because he referred to the old world, the legacy world with Windows applications used on the mobile devices. And he said that we are one of the only technologies in the market that allow you to adapt to this specific device, because we find out that the form factor of the device is different than it was before, and we can adapt accordingly. You want to comment on that?
Well, so what one of the contexts that I definitely mentioned AppSense is in this combining the mobility stack and the desktop management stack from a single vendor, because there are so many of the top enterprise mobility management vendors out there today do not have the advantage. This sounds like an AppSense plug, and
go for it. We love it.
That was my job as a moderator.
Never be afraid to speak the truth. Even if it's
say the truth.
Yeah. Well, so we speak of so many different enterprise mobility management vendors and talk about their capabilities, with what they can do with device management versus app management. And that's the concentrate of my book. But of course, mobile does not exist in a vacuum. As we've been saying in the VDI delusion, and as you're saying right now. So being able to have the visibility into how we're providing access to all form factors, desktop, web apps, native mobile apps, that data needs to go out to all of those client locations, and if there's a separate silo to get your data to mobile versus to get your data to the desktop, then obviously that makes things more difficult. So there's a large advantage right there, of course.
Absolutely, and we're not going to go into some of our detailed future roadmap, although we have been discussing that with some of you as customers, and happy to do that more on a one-on-one NDA basis. But clearly, we have some separate products here addressing the Windows space and the mobile space, but we certainly see BYOD, be that a mobile device, be that a Windows device, Windows 8, be it a MacBook or whatever, actually having contextual policy around those devices to manage the apps and the data on those devices in a very elegant yet rich way, but not tied, and trying to leverage several different systems like you have now. We think that is the nirvana. So again, we're not going to dive down into that detailed roadmap because that contains a 2 to 3 year strategy, but we will do that on a specific one-on-one basis afterwards, or at any time. Yeah.
Now, when we're looking at the slide here, the idea is to show you, there are a couple of things that we can do. So you see the light green tiles. These are the things that we can do, but that we don't want to cover today. And you see those darker green tiles, and those are the ones that you can choose from. So I would suggest, who wants to choose? Who wants to select what we want to do first? Maybe it's you, Jack.
I'm seeing dynamic configuration policies for 200 points. And what you say the app agility for self-installed applications, and I know that in the desktop world and in the mobile world, those can mean very different things, and at sometimes and the same thing at other times. We've been talking about this issue of dealing with user installed applications on virtual desktops for a long time now, and on the mobile devices. I'm assuming that when you're talking about self-installed, you're talking about the user's ability to find the corporate's mobile applications and other corporate applications that they want, and have a wide selection available to them to install on devices.
The interesting thing was when I started working on that deck, I thought this app agility would be a nice topic to cover, but I had the Windows world in my head at the beginning, but then I thought, whoa, look at that. The same is happening on the mobile world. Now, how can we bring those two together? Because you said it's separate. Why is that? Why is it so separate? Because I believe that I use my laptop to travel. I have smaller form factor mobile devices that I also use for traveling, but I need to demo, so I still need to carry around this heavyweight laptop. But still, I have the same need to self-install applications, both on the smaller footprint mobile device and on this device. So I don't see a fundamental difference between the two. Yes, it's two different platforms. I agree. But what is your take on that?
When it comes to self-installed applications, so we're talking about the catalog of it's your product, so you know it better than me. But the catalog of when you are a mobile now user, you can download your corporate mobile email client and your corporate corporate browser with all of the corporate settings, file syncing client, the mobile now client,
and data now,
And in my last session and in my book, I talk about this. So this idea of mobile application management, where we have our personal device with all of our personal stuff in it, and because iOS and Android devices are very good at sharing information between applications, we need to do some special things to our corporate applications to be able to have them safely reside together simultaneously on our device with our personal applications. Because the old BlackBerry MDM way is, how we solve this problem of having the personal and the work, which, are you guys using the term dual persona in your marketing? I know a lot of people on mobile especially refer to this as dual persona. The old way, of course, would be, we're just going to have to lock down the personal applications so that they can't get in and muck around with the corporate apps. But of course now, with talking about self-installed applications, we're talking about, so there's this catalog of corporate mobile applications that can be managed. And when these applications are managed, these corporate managed applications, you can make them so that they only communicate with each other and not with the personal apps on the device. So that was a very roundabout explanation, or well, actually the explanation can be an entire book length. So that was a very short explanation of mobile application management and why it exists and how it works. But the important part is these manageable mobile applications with these management features. Number one, where do you get these manageable applications? And number two, like you go out into the App Store, like I want to have an app that I can plug into my corporate system that I can use with my corporate stuff, and I want to be able to go and have multiple options maybe for how I deploy. So there's that catalog there of what different apps that are available that work within the corporate ecosystem. I'm wondering if you can mention about the strategy of, we talk about this thing about app wrapping and getting compatible apps to work within the management ecosystem.
Yeah.
Maybe Simon, you can demonstrate it.
So, I mean, I think it's important probably to touch on the fact that there are, historically there have been probably a number of different ways in which you can manage a mobile device, right? Jack's laughing because he's seen this before.
Oh, right. I was just thinking, I didn't even know that you had that slide, but it's perfect for...
All right, good.
We will license it.
I mean, on the left-hand side of things, there have obviously been a number of technologies out there that focus on mobile device management, MDM. And there's lots of questions at the moment about, is MDM dying, for instance? Is it a dead technology, for instance? I think the latest statistics are that 30% of organisations have got an MDM solution in place. 30%. That's not a lot, right? And
how many of those organizations have users that have iPhones and want to be able to do work and personal stuff on them?
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's 100%. Yeah.
So I think MDM is definitely 100% not dying. And I also think that it gets put into this bucket that as soon as you do MDM, it means, oh, well, you've turned the device into a useless brick and the user's unhappy, for instance. We still today have customers that have got 5,000 BYOD iPads and another customer who's got 10,000 corporate-owned iPads, right? So depending on who the owner is, well, that will depend on what level of control you want to put on the device, right? And also, MDM isn't just about policy and locking down, but it's also about configuration. Yeah. So for instance, when we all walked into this, into that hall this morning, everybody was quickly diving around to get the Wi-Fi password, for instance. MDM solutions out of the box offer a level of configuration.
You could have emailed everybody a configuration profile with Wi-Fi
connections. Correct. Yeah. So whether it be certificates, VPN profiles, Wi-Fi profiles, for instance, and anybody that's in education, for instance, anyone that's supporting users that are bringing their own devices into educational environments will know that actually that part of MDM is probably just as important. But we are now evolving because MDM doesn't quite suit all environments, and I've got a demonstration if I'm able to show it, where we can very successfully, within the space of probably 1 minute 30 seconds, I can take my nice brand new iPad on board myself, and all of a sudden I can disable things like the camera, I can disable iTunes, I can stop, for instance, the capture feature, and I can do that on Android and iOS, and I've got an MDM solution. But it has evolved into more than that, and it's evolved into mobile application management, mobile information management, the way we deal with email, for instance, etc., etc. And on this side of the screen, what we've tended to do, if we didn't want to go down an MDM route, we've tended to use a technology that said, okay, well, can we containerize those applications? And unfortunately, that typically means that what you start to do is start using third-party or vendor-specific apps. And unfortunately, with vendor-specific apps, you tend to find that the user experience is then lost. So,
Or you have to get an SDK and...
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, I don't know. How much did Apple spend on designing their mail client, for instance? They would have spent a fair amount of money. I mean, I personally like the fact that, you know, I can jump in and out of... I quite like the fact that I can jump in and out of my email in one thing. So I can see all of my inboxes, for instance, and I can go into Gmail too. I can go into Hotmail, for instance, and I can jump in and out, for instance. I quite like that look and feel. So why, for instance, would I want a completely separate application to access my corporate email? That frustrates me a little. So I suppose the point I'm making is that, you know, when we talk about EMM, we see it as slightly more than just MDM, and we summarize it like so. So yes, we've got MDM. We've also got a way of securing email, both through a third-party app and natively. We consider the data and what is actually going on with data on that device, and should that device be encrypted? What happens if that device is jailbroken, for instance? And also then that mobile application management piece. And on the MAM side of things, it really comes down to what many refer to as app wrapping. And for ourselves, it's a case of taking the package and actually, via our own tool, wrapping that application so that you can dynamically apply policies to that application as opposed to that device, and hence BYO DAD, the A of DAD, right? You're talking about managing, putting policy and experience around the app, not the device. And
that's really...
I can show that. Carry on.
Out of curiosity, did any of you happen to be in my session over next door? Okay, great. So those like 3 email, like I mentioned 3 email techniques in my session, and like the hooks, and basically like what he's saying is that everything that I mentioned as a techniques, like the whole wide range of them that mobile now is doing. So like the native email or native email with encrypted attachments,
yep.
Or if you want to do an app, all 3 of those options for email.
Yeah, it's all in there.
It's all in there.
Did you find out if people prefer to use the native email client, or if they really want to go for the third-party email client? Is it something that?
So do you want to hear my soapbox on this issue? So you know, it's this the number one issue in enterprise mobility management today is how do you deal with email? Because we have 3 options. We might have to restrict some applications on the device, because remember the applications can all share very easily. And so if the email is in the built-in client, that built-in client is designed to share everything with the rest of the device. So to remove dangers, we just have to blacklist those applications. Or we might decide that, well, what we really care about is the attachments, so we can encrypt the attachments, use the native client, but if it shares it to a third party, if it shares it to some random application, well, it's encrypted, so it can't open it, so that only corporate applications can open it. Or this third-party email client thing, which, so, like, I'll admit, like, yes, Apple does have the very best, well, who knows? Apple does have a very good iOS mail client. But I do believe that it is possible to create third-party mail applications that people like to use. Look at the Gmail app.
Yep.
How many people use a Gmail app? Look at the big buzz around Mailbox.
Yeah.
And because if you swipe to delete, or whatever, people will love that stuff. So in theory, it is possible to make an application that a third-party application that people don't like.
And on the Android platform, that's proven already, right?
Yeah. And the thing that we're dealing right now, of course, is that Apple has its restrictions around what third-party applications are allowed to do, and some of those restrictions include third-party email clients are not allowed to download messages in the background. Now you can send push notifications and you can get your subject line, but you're not going to download that email until you actually go and open that application. And this background downloading issue, we've seen as we've gone from iPhone OS 1 to iOS 6, and then we'll get 7 in a month. we've seen Apple become looser and looser with their restrictions around third-party applications. So can I predict the future of what Apple is going to do? Hell no. But is there a good chance that third-party applications will someday be able to download email messages in the background? I think we can say that yes, there is a chance that that will happen someday. So regardless of what's happening, like, I believe there's a compromise no matter what, whether it's restricting the applications or you don't get to download your messages in the background. If it were up to me, and I'm just some guy, I'm just a blogger. I'm not an administrator of my own environment. But why not provide the user's choice? Like, say, do you want to use the third-party app, or do you want to use the native app and maybe have some restrictions? There has to be a compromise no matter what. Which one? Yeah. You get to pick which compromise you want to make. So end rant and soapbox.
Okay. So before we do that, I mean, has anyone got any objections if we just dive in and have a look at some of this technology?
Just do it.
But I mean, I think this hopefully may summarise a lot of what we're doing. Here I've got, as you can see, an iPad. That's pretty obvious. This is at the moment, this is a personal device. So I'm just using Reflector to put this onto my Mac. Nice plug for them if they're listening. At the moment, this has got no policy, nothing applied to it. It is literally just my box. I've got FIFA on there and Auto Trader and Sonos. Another good plug for Sonos there, great system. But I've literally got two pages of applications, that's it. And as you've seen, if I go into my email, I've got a VIP set up. There's some VIP, there's the Gmail, Gmail 2, Outlook, and Hotmail. They're my 4 personal accounts. Why I continue to have 4, I don't know. There's no corporate email on there. I've got access to the camera, so I could very easily take a nice little photo of you guys, say cheese, and away we go. All I'm going to do is just demonstrate how, for instance, we onboard a user, and this is a topic that's quite close to my heart, particularly where I look at other technologies. For instance, I think ease of deployment and onboarding people is extremely important, particularly in this type of environment. So whether I've been sent an email, whether I've been sent a link, however, the user has been given a URL to their particular tenant. So using my domain, username and password, I'm literally going to log on, and I'm going to go to the web browser, and I'm going to go to the install page, and it's going to say, would I like to install AppSense Mobile now for iOS? Yes, please. So it goes away. It asks me to install a MDM profile. It asks me for my PIN number, and it will install that profile.
So this is running live off our cloud SaaS-based system on AWS, yeah?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's going to carry on doing what it's doing. That's going to go through an install. I think I mentioned 1 minute 30. I hope I'm not going to fail at that. It's now asking me if I would like to install some additional applications. So it's installed the MDM profile, which is going to do my device management. It's now asking me if I'd like to install the Mobile Now application. So you can now see I've got a third page that's appeared, and we're waiting to install an application. So I've still got all of my personal apps, and I'm installing the mobile app. One thing you will see is on the first page, I've lost a number of my icons. My camera's gone, for instance. I can no longer capture. I can no longer access iTunes. So I'm just demonstrating that within the space of 30 seconds of installing that client, I have applied that MDM policy. So very quickly, I can apply a policy and configure the device with Wi-Fi and certificates and all the rest of it very, very quickly. As I now go through, though, and I now, for instance, click on my Mobile Now application, this is now going to give me the ability not just to control the device, but actually start deploying applications to me, and more importantly, these wrapped applications that we talk about. And these wrapped applications are the ones that have got policy wrapped around them. They're not statically wrapped with policy. Yeah? So if I change the policy tomorrow, the policy will dynamically change. I don't need to rewrap, for instance, these applications. So I'm just going to log in again. This time, everyone knows my password now, which is nice. That'll be on video and that'll be around the world. So it asked me for a PIN number. The PIN number could be a PIN number or it could be a password. And this is if I wanted to enforce a PIN number or a password before I launch a managed application. So let's pick a tough one, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
And importantly, that's a dynamic characteristic. So because the wrapped app talks to the mothership, the console in the cloud, and the admin of that particular tenant, because it's a multi-tenant solution, can have changed that 5 minutes before, changed it to a different PIN or set a PIN or set normal AD authentication on that. So it's all fully dynamic. Very, very important.
Yeah. So I get a notification now, and this comes onto the mail piece, okay? I get a notification that we are going to do 2 things for you. We're going to, number one, we can configure the native email client on this device to talk to my Exchange and automatically encrypt any attachments that are coming into it. And thirdly, I'm going to push down a third-party mail application where the whole application and all of its data is fully encrypted. So we're giving people 2 options.
We're doing both of the options at once.
For this demo, we're going to do both options at the same time. So now we were talking about app delivery before. Here we can now see an app store, if you like, my mobile app store. And it's now saying to me, look, there's a number of applications that are being forced on you. Not ones that you can choose, but these are the ones that IT are forcing on me. So it's going through and it's saying, I'm going to give you a third-party mail application. I'm going to give you a mobile viewer that can be used to view encrypted documents such as .docs, .ppts, for instance. So these are now all going to start installing. While it's doing that, we can see that the MDM policy is still applied. I should also be able to go into, okay, I'm just checking what emails I was showing there. We should also now, you can see that I've now been prompted for an AppSense password. So it's set up my native email client. So now I really am going to go, shut your eyes everybody.
This is always my favorite part of demos.
So fingers crossed, now you can see you've got my AppSense email in there. Yeah? I do want to show you that it's configured, but I really don't know what's on there. So yeah, let's just assume that my email's set up. And that is actually anything that's coming into that native inbox.
No tricks, real life.
Anything that's coming into that inbox is my active sync email, and the attachments are being encrypted. Now, if I want to open one of those attachments, that's where I will get prompted for a PIN, and it will say, hey, do you want to open it up in, for instance, a viewer, and that viewer will be, as it is now, PIN protected. Yep. So this viewer has the ability to open those encrypted attachments, like so. If, for instance, I want to use the third-party mail, that's also been delivered. So there's 2 ways there, at the very least, of deploying mail natively. So, took longer than 1 minute 30, but MDM, I've got mobile device management configured. I've got applications which have got policy wrapped around them, whether it be a PIN number, whether it be geolocation, whatever that might be. And I've also configured email in a number of different ways and encrypted the attachments. Should we pause there? I feel like I've been talking for ages.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, how configurable is all the context of this? Because I do come from an education environment, and we do have 24,000 students logging in with
Whatever they want.
7 devices each.
Yeah. Would you like a Rubik's Cube, by the way?
Oh,
Go on. I met someone last night, reckon they could, didn't matter what state I gave it to them in, they reckon they could do it within 5 minutes. Not sure it was a chat-up line. How configurable is it?
Yeah, because if we're going to start managing their, in quotes, their personal devices,
Yeah.
they're going to want a lot to say about it. And so we're going to leave a lot of yes no's.
I could probably talk you through it if you want.
The admin console.
This is the admin console. This is my tenant that I look after. What we look after. So you can see me here.
See, AWS is up today, so that's good.
Oops. Beg your pardon. I really should. So there is a user view of this, and then there is an admin view. So there we go. You can see I've got, under me, I've got 3 devices. I've got 2 iPads, one which my wife dropped last week, and a phone. We won't talk about that. If I click on this one, we'll see location awareness, for instance.
Yeah.
So I know exactly where this screen's terrible, where it's coming from. I can see what state it's in, whether it's been rooted, whether it's been jailbroken, for instance. I can actually carry out a number of actions on it. So for instance, I could just decide to send someone a message. I could decide to wipe the device completely and I'd lose everything. Alternatively, I can do very clever things like lock the business apps. So that third-party mail application, the business-delivered Yammer, or any of the wrapped applications, I can actually lock those but allow access to everything else. And again, I can choose to revoke email. So
I'm hoping there's a confirmation screen on the white
No, there's not.
device button.
no, it just does it.
Nah.
See, it just does
The
it.
buttons are kind of close together.
So,
Well, we're looking at the usability aspects of that.
Where's the removal of the application, though, or where's that? Because you've been able to block email, revoke email, but you're not able to remove data now from the endpoints?
So that all comes down to the policies and the apps that are applied to the user. So for instance, if I go into here, I go to featured apps, for instance, these are all the applications that are either forced upon or available to the user. And if I remove them from there, they will then be removed from the device. So if you just wanted to pinpoint an app and revoke it or remove it, then you can do that.
Thinking more an example there, if the student needs,
Yeah.
you want to take it away.
Yeah.
If somebody uninstalls the application as well from Invoice?
So, for instance, I could, as a demo, I could go into here and I could just say remove either the Mobile Now app or I could remove the MDM profile. I could do one of either or both of those.
Can't remove, say, the viewer. You can't just remove the viewer out.
I can remove the viewer as a user, yes. As soon as I remove the viewer, I then, for instance, or any other app, I then obviously don't have access to that business application or any of its data. If I choose to remove the profile or the application, it will take my email and my business apps with me. So those apps that are left remaining, in fact, I think it automatically removes them now anyway, but even if they were, they're just useless. And, so as soon as I remove AppSense software from this device, it's going to take things like my email with it as well. To your point, though, I mean, I can't quite see. Where's configuration? Device configuration. If I wanted to set everybody up today on Wi-Fi, for instance, then we would go into that, and that would be a way, for instance, we would set up someone's Wi-Fi. It links into AD, and in essence, you just create users and groups, and then you can apply applications to those groups, and then policies to those groups as well. It's pretty intuitive.
So I was going to say, if you want to know what is possible to do to the iOS device itself, the iPhone configuration utility.
Yeah.
If anybody's familiar with the iPhone configuration utility, it's the tool the desktop utility that you can use to build these configuration profiles, which are it's the same profiles that Mobile Now is sending down to the device, and you can see the settings that you can change. You can see what information you can query the device for, and you can see what management actions they perform. And of course, what Mobile Now is doing is taking those the configurations, the queries, and the actions that the configuration profile makes available. Mobile Now would be all of the policies to combine. We know this action. We know this happened to this device, so we're going to configure this way, or we know this happened to the device, and so we're going to take this action. Is there an interface like where you can sort of take like the raw actions and raw queries and sources of information to build your own policies from scratch, or are they all sort of built in?
Currently,
how do you mean?
Currently, they're all built in. I mean, we're looking at publishing APIs, etc., that will enable people to do more self-configuration as a future item.
So it's the policies for the common tasks are built in.
Yeah, but it's an incredibly rich set of policies right now. I mean, Simon hasn't really scratched the surface. You know, there's things like geofencing. So that camera functionality that was taken off, you can say, I only want the camera function disabled when I'm, in this specific area. Maybe you're in a high security area or whatever, the camera functionality is disabled. Maybe, if you're in a bank, certain things, you don't want certain programs to run outside Switzerland. We've seen that requirement, many of us in this business over the years. You can't run some programs in certain countries, you want to only restrict it, so you can you can set those with the policies, both from an MDM and an MAM point of view. So, and we think actually it's an interesting challenge. You can come and have a look on the stand or whatever. But we think it's the richest set of policies by far out there.
But even going further, because it's not only limited to the mobile devices, because what we have with the Desktop Now product is pretty much the same functionality, that we are able to apply policies depending on different events that are happening, that can be linked to location, that can be linked to screen size and stuff like that.
Great point,
so this is exactly where the end-to-end story shows up between the different products. So it's not separate products that are developed completely in isolation. We are looking at the historic products that we have, and then we start moving some of the features that we think should be used in the mobile world as well over to the mobile world, and vice versa. And so maybe later we have some time and you can highlight how we do that on the Windows side of things, because we are also using filtering, and which is a sort of an isolation of application, or whatever you want to call it, wrapping. On a PC, nobody calls it wrapping, but basically this is what we're doing there. And this is why it's not separate.
Yeah. There's a question there.
You referred to kind of application wrapping for mobile apps, where you have policies for it. Can you pre-configure those apps as well from third-party vendors? So, for example, if you download it from the App Store using a VPN, right, and you want to pre-configure the VPN settings for your environment, the user has to do that because.
Yeah.
So that's all about user support.
That's right. Yeah, so
can you repeat the question?
Fantastic question. I'll repeat it. So the question there was, can you configure?
Yeah,
not profile, but can you configure an application as it's sent out? So in the same way that third-party email was sent down to my device pre-configured. As an example, let me just.
The iOS configurator has an email setting configuration for that. That's built in.
Yeah.
And you can create web links.
So I'm talking about this one here. So that mail application, for instance, is already when it comes down to me, it's been configured with my Exchange server and my email details. I think what you're talking about is, that's brilliant, you can do it for that app, but what about other applications? Yeah? Yeah. And to be honest, with our Desktop Now product, we do a lot of that. If you're a Desktop Now user, you'll know that you'll use our Environment Manager product to take a standard Windows image or a standard sequenced AppV application, and you'll tweak it depending on what side of the audience you sit on, for instance, or what context that person might be in. So I can, take a standard image and configure it. And I think what we're talking about here is doing the same thing for those mobile applications. So today, the answer to that is no. We can do it with the device. We can do it with native email. We can do it with that third-party email. We are looking at doing that for apps.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so if you force them to use the wrapped apps, because those apps won't, if they download just arbitrary apps. Sorry?
You bring your own device
Sure. So, but if they download those devices and they don't go through the corporate app store, they won't be able to access the data.
Yeah, but universities.
But you can push. So you can push those apps down that enable them to do the university-related work automatically. So they'll quickly learn that those wrapped apps have a little tailored symbol on the logo, so they'll recognise that those apps give them access to the university data. They won't. Yeah.
You are right. No, you are right. And there's two things here. There's number one, can you pre-configure applications? Can you allow Benny to download Twitter and it automatically has got his Twitter name in it, so all he needs to do is his password. Today, we don't do that. What we do is we send Twitter down and we've got dynamic policy wrapped around it. You're talking about an additional level of policy, which is configuration. And that is something that we are looking at.
Yeah.
Are you talking about categories of applications?
No.
No, probably he wants to configure a category of applications. Like every email.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
We tell our students they can download the VDI file
Yeah.
to their iPad. But then they'll go, right, and then concern what's the settings, what's the... And then it'd be really good if I could just say, here's the app.
Here's the app, it's pre-configured, away you go.
Pre-configured.
Yeah. So that is pre-configuration. I would argue it sort of sits in between the policy and the user experience, because it could be it's a personal setting for an app.
One more.
Correct. Correct. MST example is a great example. Right. That's one thing. The second thing is, how do you then deal with the user getting that app? Because unless there is a wrapped version of it on the iTunes store, then they're going to have to come through an app store of sorts, whether it's ours or anybody else's, or you're going to have to push it to them. Now, we have ways in which we can push linked applications, for instance, through the store, but they are two separate things. I just wanted to make that clear, that how do you take the user to the wrapped version is one thing, and then does the wrapped version have that MST type functionality that you would know in the Windows world? Jack, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we talk about all of these great features of managed mobile applications, but the big question is, where are we going to get all of these manageable applications from? Because our users, they go directly to the Apple App Store, and I know there are a few mobile now compatible applications in the public App Store, correct? I think I remember that.
Yes.
There's some, but so to get these manageable applications that are so great, there are four options. We can some MDM vendors and MAN vendors provide their own versions of the applications. Now that's a dangerous business to be in, because if you're a vendor and you're providing your own applications, then you get judged on that app, and you could have the best infrastructure in the world, but if they don't like your email app for reasons that are out of control, as I mentioned earlier, then you're in trouble. But that's one source. The second source, if you build your own app, your own corporate app in-house, obviously you can use an app wrapping tool, or you can build it to an SDK so that it has the management hooks. The third and fourth option. So yeah, there is no way to get in between the user and the Apple App Store. So the solution is to either get the app management, get manageable apps into the App Store. So I know there are a few mobile now apps in the public App Store, so the user can go and find it in the App Store and download it, and it already works. And the other way is what they're doing for some of the other applications, which is to, instead of distributing through the public App Store, you find the original creaor of that application, strike up some sort of agreement. Hey, we would like to redistribute your application. We'll distribute it on our own, sign it with our iOS Developer Enterprise Certificate, wrap it, and put it that way. So between those, four different techniques of obtaining manageable apps, that is kind of what we have to deal with in order to get this world of managed mobile applications.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh, sorry. More questions.
There's a question.
In a people-centric environment that we're talking about here,
You're learning. That's good.
Why have a separate application if you're looking at mobile now versus all the other desktop nows, or is there an integrated solution
We should talk later. Yeah, but that goes back to what I was saying.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the history, you know, we've had this rich Windows product that works with Citrix, VMware, physical desktops. You know, in that lovely domain joined PC world, you know, we thought would live forever. This product, you know, is focused. You know, the mobile now, if you like, stack currently lives in the cloud. You know, we've got a demo of you know, on-prem appliance if you really need to be on-prem appliance for example. But this addresses, you know, contextual policy, MDM, MAM for mobile devices. But you know, really, there's nothing stopping us. And in fact, you know, again, we can have more detailed conversation and show you prototypes and things like that around desktop, you know, BYOD, desktop PCs, laptops, MacBooks, etc. So I completely agree with you. You know,
Your question drives us every single day,
you know,
because we want to get there.
I think that is the future. That, you know,
Yeah.
that unified view absolutely is the future. But meanwhile, you know, there's a lot of you out here. You know, people talk about the death of the PC and the death of Windows and etc. etc. You know, most of us have a huge amount of Windows infrastructure that's going to be going for a number of years.
Yeah, it brings me on to perhaps ask something else as well, which is lots of people talk about BYOD, and then I go into an organisation, 50,000 users in size, and they'll say, "There's no way I'm letting any BYOD come near my organisation. I'm going to continue managing those 50,000 PCs or that estate of 50,000 VDI machines for as long as I can, because I want to remain in control." And I think the challenge for vendors and for us in general is, you know, there isn't one answer to any of this. You know, the world isn't suddenly going to flip and go BYOD. I mean, I read some stats the other day that what was the blog that we put out the other day? Something about BYOD by 2017. You know, it was part of your job requirement that if you didn't come with your own device, then you wouldn't get a job. Well, I'm the other way. I'm like, if you want me to work, then you need to give me the tools to do the job, right?
But is there a difference between the US and Europe? Because I
There
believe
is.
that in
There
Europe,
is.
more people would expect that their employer gives them the device, while in the US, you would like to bring your own device.
Europe
So-
has
so-
a load of legal issues
yeah.
and challenges. You know, it's seen as a taxable benefit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, you've got to have electrical compliance. You know, in the UK and Europe, you have these stupid stickers on your devices every
Oh, not
year.
only in the UK.
But have you ever bought an iPad that doesn't have that electrical compliance?
You can't use it.
You-
No,
Officially,
but,
you cannot.
but things that are plugged into the sockets in the UK
I mean,
have
but
to
so-
have to be tested every
But,
year. It's just
but
crazy.
an iPad is an iPad no matter who paid for it.
But anyway, the point is, it doesn't really matter if it's BYOD or COPE. You know, corporate owned, personally
Yes.
enabled, because you know that's what this is. This is an AppSense device, but I've got all my own photos, pictures, my email, etc. So we don't really care if it's COPE or BYOD. You know, and I think I think one of our major customers, has said they're getting major cost savings by letting people bring in their own phones. And I think in this case, they were starting off with some early competitive technology, you know, where you have to compile a lowest common denominator mail app, or use their own lowest common denominator mail app, or anything you need to link it in, you have to compile with an SDK, and all the policies, you know, are in the SDK, and it's really clumsy and clunky. But it's coming in various forms.
The question I wanted to pose, if possible, was around today. I think there is when we think of BYOD, we immediately think of iPads and Android devices, and probably BYOM, bring your own Mac, right? That's what a lot of people do. And then we think back to, and then someone says, oh yeah, but what about the Windows world? And immediately we think back to this managed environment. Windows XP, we've got worries about 2014 coming up, and we need to migrate everyone onto Windows 7, and that's going to continue to be managed. The question I've got really for people is, well, what happens with Windows 8? Yeah, what happens with 8.1? What happens with Windows moving forward? Because today, I know for a fact that there's almost a slider. There's like this BYOD to managed slider. The unmanaged device versus the managed device. And go into any organisation and say, where are you on that slide? Oh, I've got 10% BYOD and the rest is managed. Oh no, I'm not. I'm all the way over here and I've only got 10% managed left, for instance. The truth is, you're going to need a solution, a platform that is able to deal with that. That's a people-centric view of the world. That's great. But when Windows 8 comes along, where's it going to sit, right? I was in the US with a very large customer the other way, and 50% of their employees are on a BYOD scheme, and the BYOD devices they're bringing in are Windows 8 laptops. How many solutions out there today deal with Windows 8 as a BYOD platform? Are we still going to continue to manage Windows in the way that we've managed it historically, or are we going to have to start taking a DAD approach, or an AD approach, if you like, just apps and data, to our Windows-based environment as well? And that actually is sort of leads on to an even more interesting conversation following on from yours, which is, okay, so who's looking at, BYOD Windows?
For the last 10 minutes, I want to suggest that we cover the rest of the DAD story, which is data. Because so far we had devices, apps, and now what about data?
Yep.
Can you enlighten us about what we do around data, Simon?
Yes.
You can tell we've rehearsed this thoroughly. I mean, we've had a Data Now product out since last August. We demoed it here last year. So we had the first version out, Data Now Essentials. We're working on a new version that's coming out real soon now. But I think the USP really around that, I mean, the world is full of, it seems, data solutions. I mean, I think the real USP for us is the fact we let you access the data at rest on your normal drives, in your company. We don't say we're going to take all that data and put it into the cloud somewhere. We're going to put it in our own cloud that you don't know where we store the data, etc. We may be up, we may be down. A lot of you have got big data centers that you've invested in. They're probably the most physically secure places you can store data that you can guarantee the security of. So one of the big USPs for us is, sure, we've got cloud connectors. We can, if you want to put stuff off into ShareFile, or really, if we've even got an app on the App Store. If you look at Data Now, for sort of prosumer use, we'll let you connect to all kinds of things like SkyDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. If you want to sort of have all your free storage, amongst those things and get up to your 5 gigs and then move on to the next one, or we'll let you copy it back under policy, if to a company home drive. So
that's the most critical thing. Policy. That is the differentiator.
Absolutely. So the rich policy you've seen around mobile now, the rich policy many of you have seen on desktop now already. The ability to control where you run your Windows apps, inside, outside the firewalls, etc. Environment managers had a very, very rich policy for years. We've got that contextual policy on your data access. So, and again, it's a bit of a difficult concept to explain, but you're a bright lot. If you wrap the Data Now app with mobile now, then you've got another layer of dynamic contextual policy around your data access app. And then you can force the data that you're taking to live in that encrypted sandbox that then the other corporate wrapped business apps can access. So actually, it's a really nice, better together story, the Data Now and mobile now. But yeah, so we think Data Now, the real USP is being able to access your home drives, Mac drives, being able to share data, but not have to take copies of the data, put it in the cloud somewhere, keep syncing it, copy it elsewhere on the SAN, etc. So I've personally seen very few solutions out there that have got that kind of unique ability.
Jack, what's your...
Yeah, Jack. That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. This divorcing the idea of cloud storage from mobile file syncing is, a lot of people have the two closely associated in their minds. But of course, like you said, they are completely different variables. And like we talk in our consumerization sessions, first of all, so like this thing, my iPhone has a mail client on it, but last time I tried to open a network drive, open a folder on here, it wasn't too successful. But what I do have is, I can go out and get Dropbox, I can get, any one of a million things, which, if I'm, any employee can go out and get Dropbox right there today. But I actually use Dropbox myself. But if my company had some sort of cloud file syncing solution like this, then I wouldn't have to be using crazy unsecured
It's not a cloud
Dropbox.
syncing solution. It syncs back to the on-prem file
you can
servers that you have.
We can offload stuff into the cloud, but basically, if your data's sitting on a home drive, you need access to it on your iPad, etc. You can access it, or you've got data. My daughter worked for a company, with a crazy lockdown laptop, and so she, I was really surprised several years ago to find out, her Dropbox client was on one of my home PCs. She was already there because she was taking pictures for her work, and she wanted to share them and store them and use them in a work context. But there was no way with the crazy lockdown laptop and policies of her IT that she could actually, her job was being compromised. So if she could just have copied them straight into her home drive and then display them on her iPad, et cetera, then, effectively what we have here is a perfect solution. And the other thing I should have mentioned is, also a lot of us use SharePoint in various forms. Venerable SharePoint is still going. So having a connector to SharePoint where you can access SharePoint with a VPN-less solution, because VPNs, I think we're all fed up with VPNs and RSA tokens now when you're sort of trying to graze information in a few minutes or get information. You're not sitting in with a beautiful high-speed connection in a hotel somewhere. You're about to catch a train or a flight. You're trying to get data. So accessing SharePoint on the fly is neat as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but so even if you don't know what you want to do for your mobile devices yet, you can still, if you're using data now, you can say, like no offline local syncing. You can have all of those security policies even before you've decided what to do with the rest of the mobile devices.
You can have it as read-only and there's nothing stored on the device.
This is, Brian and we're out of time, aren't we?
5 minutes.
We've been, Brian and Gabe and I have been saying, like, this data, this mobile file syncing component, if you want to figure out mobile, this is, this is action item number 1.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really, really important mobile. You go sort of, it's almost like, MDM, MAM, and you put data in there as well.
Yeah, I say do this one first.
We actually started with data first, actually.
So I'm going to...
Anyway.
Sorry, go on.
So it's a question. The client, virtual client, is that just broker access to
Yes.
file
Yes.
set?
Yes.
It doesn't take a copy of it.
No.
No.
Data privacy is always there on the
Correct.
You don't move your
Correct.
data.
Again,
you
we're
don't
not
put it into
taking
a
copies of data. We think that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you can lock down the clients as needed. Or
Yes.
So go on.
How complex are those policies? So once the user has a copy of their file sharing on their laptop, which
Yeah.
can be taken offline,
Yeah.
is there anything stopping them doing a select all copying it all up to their laptop, and then when we disable it,
Yeah. So now we're into more DLP type conversations, and taking my AppSense hat off, if you will allow me to, or believe that I can. That is an area that we don't address, and that actually I think is a bigger concern for everybody in this room. Which, particularly if I go back to my BYOD Windows 8 example, it's like actually the data itself, the files and the folders, for instance, that we're going to need to start thinking about how we put controls around them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Syncing almost, dare I say, syncing in my mind is commoditized. It's just like, woo, you can sync. Great.
But yeah, wrapping sort of apps and data, if you like, on laptops, we think is, there's a lot of interesting policy control that you can really
that's
go on.
something that's interesting because in the for mobile application management from the beginning, we talk about being able to control the sharing in a way that, like your example, we don't really. It is much more difficult to control.
But this is exactly where the mobile world starts influencing the desktop world.
Absolutely.
So it goes back. Absolutely.
Having said all of that, just real quickly, because we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Anybody who's still got that April 2014 date worrying them in terms of their Windows XP migration. Obviously, we have a product that does profile migration from XP to 7. But, you know, for me personally, the fact I can get a couple of documents on my phone, okay, that's nice. But actually, my bigger problem is my day-to-day work and the fact that I want to share and collaborate documents with people from a Mac device, and then when I'm at home, I'm on a Windows device. And when I'm logged in via my terminal server session or my VDI session, for instance, I actually think the data problem in the more traditional desktop world is just as big and is just as bad. Folder redirection,
Yeah, folder redirection, it goes
files,
further.
They all suck,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And if you're doing a Windows XP migration today, biggest problem, you've got data everywhere.
Because we find customers that are very creative with this technology.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, looks like we've
there
probably...
was one more question down there, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So think about it in the opposite direction. When you've got these sandbox applications,
Yeah.
so from your data now and your data available, what about just a one-way traffic of being able to push data back to or from an outside application back into the corporate network or the corporate
Right.
sort of data now application?
Can you repeat the question?
I don't know whether you're sort of we're almost perhaps talking about things like per application VPNs, where you're forcing particular applications to direct traffic back to a certain location, perhaps.
But also perhaps like per. Oh yeah, I remember there's the like more like the copy and paste or share document into an app and versus not being able to out. And I think I remember a few weeks ago I was looking through mobile now, and I remember there were
encryption seamless
policies
both
that
ways.
you could set it one way
So
or
you force this
both
out to
ways
save
or no
in and then
ways.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is you don't want to be able to send to the
No.
but
Yeah.
you want to be able to actually push things.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's seamless. So it's done on the fly both ways. Right, I think
Right.
we're probably going to kind of
Running
end
out of
our
time.
rambling session. I
Thank
hope
you
you
very
enjoyed
much.
it. You know, our stand is just out there. If you've got any more questions, you know, we're all around. We can show you some more demos, more policies, etc. Thank you for being a very attentive audience.
Get your
Enjoy the
t-shirts
rest of the show.
If you'd like
Cheers.
one.